adding our voices to the condolences expressed by the Minister to the untimely death of the Inspector of Prisons, Judge Michael Riley. I think from our point of view he was an outstanding Inspector of Prisons. He'll have very big shoes to fill, whoever comes after him, and the best tribute we could pay to his work is actually to take on board many of his very useful reports into the prison service. I'd like to thank the deputies who participated, particularly those who supported the bill, and to echo their comments, I suppose, in terms of my disappointment at the government's reaction to this situation. I know she won't vote against it because obviously it will go through anyway, but I have to say the reasons that she put forward for not supporting it just simply do not stack up. And first reason for that, I suppose, is that human rights can't wait. I mean, the idea that this proposal is somehow being put forward to micromanage in primary legislation the running of a prison is not true. This is the only part of prison rules which will be put in primary legislation. The total flexibility in terms of everything else, and the reason for that is that it is sufficiently important to warrant that it would be so. Not only that, but actually international human rights legislation states that we should be putting it in law. I mean, if you look at the situation, at a minimum, the UN Committee Against Torture has said that any isolation of prisoners be strictly and specifically regulated by law in terms of maximum duration, conditions and so on. That's exactly what our bill attempts to do. We know the European Court of Human Rights has recognised prolonged solitary confinement as a violation of Article 3 of the European Court of Human Rights, and the revised Nelson Mandela rules as well also say that states should codify these practices in law. So it's not inflexible. Actually, it's best international practice. And it's worth pointing out that a prisoner in Wheatfield last January won a case against a protected regime he was under in the High Court, where it was found that his constitutional right to bodily and psychological integrity was breached because he was held in solitary confinement, a breach that was neither necessary nor proportionate to the alleged and perceived risk to him. Now, that decision was overturned by a higher court, but nonetheless the High Court took the view in that case. So human rights are not optional, and human rights would dictate that we need to address this situation. And the Minister says the bill would restrict the rights and obligations of the prisoner governor to ensure good order and safety. No, it wouldn't. It just means he or she has to do it in a different way. It doesn't remove the power from governors to remove a prisoner for their own safety or the safety of others on a short-term basis immediately for 24 hours or so on. It absolutely allows that, but what it doesn't allow is for those people to be left there, because as other deputies have pointed out, if we'd said put them in, break their legs so that their legs can never be repaired and they'll be wheelchair bound, we'd have people out on the streets. But it has been proven that beyond 15 days does irreversible psychological damage, and we are harming people's health, and that should not be allowed in any situation. So we know that reasons have been put forward for justifying this practice, for example on the grounds, well, Asher, look at under Rule 63, some of these people have requested that measure for themselves. And that's true, but that should be immediately ringing major alarm bells that somebody would want to insulate themselves away from all human contact. That person is already, by being in that situation, calling out for help. The fact that we would say that prisoners are a danger or be open to threats for other prisoners is saying that we haven't adequately resourced our prisons to deal with safety. And in fairness to Judge Riley, he did an excellent report on bullying in the prisons, and it does exist. And that could be dangerous for staff and for prisoners, but that means we have to do that job better. It doesn't mean we have to violate people's human rights. And the bill, as other deputies have said, puts very specific provisions in place, such as that it would be prohibited for prisoners with mental or physical disabilities. And Deputy Lahart raised, he was very concerned if people with mental health problems were in this situation. Well, they are. And they're there tonight, and they shouldn't be there at all, and let's be clear about it. These people are there because the Central Mental Hospital does not have the capacity to take them. And the Irish Prison Service are left with a situation where they have quite a number of seriously psychologically damaged prisoners under their watch at the moment, and they cannot do anything for them because the Central Mental Hospital will only take one at a time. And if they take one person, there are people there who are acutely psychotic, who need serious medical care. You might get one prisoner being taken into the Central Mental Hospital. You're lucky if they're in there for 3 and 4 weeks and then they're sent back and they can send somebody. So it's pie in the sky for us to sort of give lip service to human rights while this is going on. And the longer we avoid legislating for this, it means the space is there to allow this to be continued. That is intolerable. We cannot have that. And that logjam, because it's not just the inmates themselves, it is the staff in the prisons who interact with them, it's the other prisoners who are there as well, and it is against all human rights obligations and is actually abhorrent in the modern age. I think it is true, very well known, that the IPS has done some excellent work around this. I know the working group is there. I know they've gone and examined practices in other regimes. I know there is talk and advanced talk of a unit being set up in the Midlands, a challenging behaviour unit that would deal with some of these cases, a unique team of sort of prison staff on a volunteer basis and psychologists and so on, which is the way that we need to go forward. But that's not going to be delivered straight away. And it's not going to do any good for the people who've already been damaged by the regime that is there. And we need to move urgently on this. I mean, human rights can't wait in terms of these matters. So I accept the work is being done, but unless we move provisions like this, I don't think that the IPS is going to get the support it needs to push this situation further. And that's one of the reasons why we need the bill to progress. The Minister also says that the prison service wouldn't be able to meet its commitment to ensure that the prisoners would get access to structured activity and so on if the bill was passed. And I see where you're coming from, but it's there for a very good reason. Because all studies would tell you that structured activity and intervening with people while they are in prison is the only way in which we will get to a situation where those people are rehabilitated. And the Whittaker report, for example, said that people should be out of cells for 12 hours a day. Other jurisdictions, the time out of cell activity time should be as long as is necessary for people to engage in full human interaction, structured activity and so on. Countries like Finland and Germany and so on very much have that approach, and developing an alternative to incarceration where people would be rehabilitated, restorative justice and so on is far more easy. So I accept it will put pressures on the Irish Prison Service, and I certainly don't expect IPS management or staff to shoulder that burden on their own. I very much, I suppose, expect us as a Dáil and to deliver the resources to allow them to move to a much more humane and better situation. And in that sense, the reason why we're moving the bill is twofold. It is good, and I'm delighted that we are discussing prisoner issues here today. I don't think it jumps the gun on anything. And for the Minister to say, oh, sure, look, if we agree with what you're doing, but we're doing it in a different way and we're doing it in our own time, sure, we'll get there in the end, isn't good enough. It's not good enough to the people who are in that situation tonight, some people who have been in that situation for months, and some people who have been in that situation for years and who have already been damaged by this. And I think the good thing is that we have given by the contributions here today and the fact that this bill is going forward, we've given some of those people hope that there is a belief, not just the prisoners but the staff who have been working in this direction, that there is an appetite for reform and for a new type of prison policy where human rights of all in that bubble or that prison world on all sides of the House can be respected, and we can deliver a system then where we're returning citizens who've spent their time inside and they come out able to contribute to society in a much better way than they did before before and not have that revolving door syndrome. So I think it's very useful that we're here discussing these issues. The Justice Committee, I hope, will be taking this forward as a serious programme of work for the year ahead, and I thank all of the deputies for their support on the matter.